Hi. It's part 2 of Daily 453, where we learn to be a better gamer. We're admiring LiquidSheth, and as a result, I got my team at LiquidSheth. Now, I have a good relationship with Team Liquid. They could, quite possibly, have just given me a shirt if I asked for it, but I didn't. I bought it with my own money because I believe in supporting esports. Ha! Team Liquid! So, as we come on over here to the game, oh yeah, let me just prompt what we're talking about. What we've pretty much done is looked at the opening of Sheth, and I mentioned that we would talk a little bit here and there about this idea of being active and being passive, how we're putting pressure on, how we wouldn't be putting pressure on, and of course note that we want to be putting pressure on all game long, and we're going to look a lot more at this throughout the game. And we can even look at this from Polt's point of view, where he is putting on a small amount of pressure with this push. For this Terran play, it ends up being pretty clear. And we're following it up with a fairly obvious extra form of pressure. We're taking another expansion. So here's a little bit of pressure. Followed up. This is actually the follow-up pressure. And when I say pressure, I don't mean the traditional sense. Generally, commentators and players use the term pressure to mean doing a physical attack at the front. The term pressure that I'm using right now is just the literal in-game feeling that your opponent will get of, oh my god, he's doing that, oh my god, he's attacking that, oh crap, he's expanding now, oh, where you just mess with his head. You're really making him feel forced to do things. So in this case, forced to defend. Now, Sheth's little addition of Banelings into this mixture, pretty nice. If things are going really wrong, Polt can always just lift up and pull away, one of the nice aspects of this. But we're seeing Sheth not really overbuild Banelings. He doesn't need to. Just sort of calmly adding on more and more units. And now actually can begin droning, because suddenly this is not as scary. If this were a pure Ling force that we were seeing, this would be nearly impossible to defeat cost effectively. But we see that Polt's not even comfortable engaging at this point. So what were we talking about? This adding on pressure? Okay, if he does attack, we can kill it off. And if he doesn't, we can always do these kinds of busts at the front. Notice how Sheth threatened this. This bust at the front would happen immediately after holding this off. Imagine that all of this dies. Pretend that we killed it off with roaches. What do we do with roaches? Try to kill off this? No, that's not going to work. Okay, now imagine we've killed this off, but we have this Ling-Baneling mixture. Oh, we can easily take this Ling-Baneling and knock the front door down. Notice how this is a lot more active of a play. And of course, as we're seeing Sheth do the cleanup here, the one last thing that I want to note, and I will pause to note this. This all came from an original problem. I'm talking about this active-passive thing with this, Baneling versus Roach sort of thing. This entire discussion came up from the idea of, we have a good style, the Stefano-style Ling Infestor play that we want to do, but there's this timing attack that comes around 10 minutes that keeps killing us. When we propose solutions to that problem, we want to choose the active solutions. And that's really, I think, the key point to all of this, because people generally hate losing, but don't hate losing. Let losses come to you to motivate where to search next. Oh, I need to have some response to this. How can I get that response up that isn't too passive? Okay, all right. So I haven't talked too much about gas timings. I don't care to talk too much about that in today's daily, because I'm enjoying this high level stuff as opposed to the lower level. Here's exactly when you take this hatchery. So I'd just like to briefly note, just to keep reinforcing this concept, this attack has concluded. We are now putting pressure on shortly after the end of the attack with an expansion. Shortly after this expansion gets up and running, Polt will be putting on more pressure by attacking. So Sheth is in a fairly nice spot. He has 75 drones. He has his 2-2 coming. Wickedly fast layer. And in general, at this point in time, the way that Zerg is going to be applying pressure is with some Infestor, just general Ling Infestor to manage these pushes, to defend against it, to get this third up and running. And generally, what we try to do is do direct attacks at the front and do nice lands on our Ling, Ultralisk, Fungal, junk while we expand to other bases. That's the general play. Pretty straightforwardly. Defend till we get Ultra Ling Infestor. Go. And just to note, notice the contrast between Ultralisks and broodlords. Both hive tech. I think on average the broodlord is probably better in a direct engagement, but the broodlord is really slow. The broodlord can't force direct engagements. In fact, almost always you can just run away. You can't run away from an ultralisk. It's like a big, scary, clingy ex-girlfriend who has cleavers, right? It's very, very difficult to run away, especially when she has her friend fungal growthing you. This analogy is not working at all, but you get the point. That's why Ultralisks, again, are popping up. Remember when we were watching Polt versus Stefano at the start? Broodlords were having a big struggle. However, I want to note that it generally revolves around direct attacking. Sheth is already setting himself up to do more aggression, killing off these rocks. Because if his opponent has some control of units here on this side of the smog, well, nice, we can still run Zerglings up like this and do a counter up like this. More Zerglings positioned here. A lot of little tiny subtle pressure moves are going to be revealed with literally these 3 upgrades. Carapace, or I should guess say, Overlord Speed, Overlord Drop, and Burrow. So let's see all those kick into real action. Slight misclick. Sheth doing some nice little bits of this. Notice how these are also nice little bits of pressure. We're trying to make points vulnerable. He's going to have to bleed out a little bit into the middle of the map. Sheth putting on the more transparent pressure of getting more expansions up, and oh, look at this, getting these banelings already burrowed, some nice little bits of harass pressure coming up, but these zerglings positioned really far to the right side. I mean, I'm ignoring almost the basics like vision and this sort of thing. Suffice to say that Sheth's playing really well, but fairly unusually, Sheth is pretty much broke on the gas front. Quite generally, Zerg players will have like 6 Infestors. They'll be able to start the 3-3 upgrades, and they'll be able to get the adrenal glands at the spawning pool as well. But Sheth spent a lot of gas, and he's also teching quite quickly. And this is kind of one of these funny moments where you can just go absolutely ballistic with expanding. The general concept is, I don't need the minerals as badly. I'm getting a lot of minerals, so what am I going to do? I'm going to just build expansions as a way to transform minerals into gas. I don't really care if the expansions die too quickly. But if they do get up, I'll build 2 geysers immediately and start getting some goody goodness up. Spines and spores. Spores surprisingly good against medevacs, and also good at controlling this space. General good preparations. But here is the moment where, and by the way, notice more pressure from Polt. This is where Polt really shines, is in these kinds of mid-games, where he's getting 3 tanks at once. Notice how late the upgrades are for Polt. This is some insanely late upgrading. He has only 1-0 Marines, whereas Sheth is just starting his level 3 Carapace. Like, absolutely insanely slow upgrades. But he's spending all that on the tank count. He has 7 tanks out right now. He has 3 more in production. He's going to be going largely metal-focused because he senses that his opponent is going for Ultralisks. He sees no Spire. He has sensed no Spire. And this is this period of passivity that we were talking about. What happens now? Most generally, Ah! Most generally, the the concentration gets broken by texts. Yeah, okay, so we were talking about applying pressure to our opponent all game long. Lots of pressure. Everyone's making fun of me in the chat, but they're being funny, so that makes it okay. Most generally, we want to be applying pressure to our opponent all game long. We want to be forcing him to do certain actions, and it's most clear in these mid-game situations. Well, if Zerg's taking a third, I'm going to be forced to take a third of my own. If we're at this 14-minute mark, oh, you have Zerg's positioning himself all in the middle. I, as the Terran, am forced to build some bunkers. If I see Mutalisk, I'm forced to build turrets. I see these Zerglings here, I'm forced to stay defensive with these units. But starting right around here, Terran stops being forced to do anything. You want to be putting pressure on your opponent. Yeah, Zerg is taking like 6 bases total now. Does this really force Polt to do anything more? No! We saw him against Stefano. He won 3 base versus 9 base. Easy, man. It's not really forcing him to do very much. Polt has the 3 bases up that he wants. If we go Ultralisk, yeah, he goes into some exchanges, but he's going to keep macroing. It doesn't force him to do anything. But this drop, this little tiny drop play by Sheth, and notice that it actually cuts in before Ultralisks. Here is the big push that's coming out. Baneling Blast. This makes it really difficult because these Banelings aren't just, oh my god, I hope he crosses here that one time and I get lucky. It is suddenly, well, he's going to be moving out and he's going to be moving back in a couple times, so I can leave these Banelings here. This is a super unusual drop. Like, nobody does this kind of drop play. And as you'll note, it ends up being pretty decently effective. It kills off a lot of workers. Our Zerglings get absolutely obliterated. However, we can do these sort of follow-up cute things, like just burrow the Zerglings. Obviously, target finding against these engineering bays is good for the slow-ups, but if our opponent... or we have these Zerglings here, and this is such a simple instance of the, oh, this forces my opponent to do something. He either has to A, scan, B, build a turret, or C, leave units here to either repel these overlords or to kill off these Zerglings. It forces a decision to be made from him. And then this other counterattack, we're taking this traditional Ling Infestor army that works pretty nicely as a direct attack the front mixture. But now we're splitting it up. Zerglings on one angle, a whole bunch of Infestors and infested Terrans on the other. Burrow, drop, Carapace, all coming into play here. And this is a pretty cool moment that even though these Infestors got completely murdered, we have suddenly forced our opponent into this defensive position. And now we're doing these drops. Okay, look, this drop seems to be failing miserably. We drop, and he's just already there to kill us off. But notice that there's some units here that are forced to live here. There's some units here that are forced to live here because of the Infestor. And where's our attack? Well, it looks like it is an only tank attack. Now, if this were the original Command & Conquer and you're playing GDI, that's fine. But this is StarCraft 2. You want to have your units together. And another nice burrow right there. Ugh. I just tried to drink Red Bull and pour it all over my shirt. I'm a master of coordination. And suddenly, this Ultralisk army is coming out a little bit later. Notice how happy we are to have had those Banelings in there. This Ultras army is coming up a little bit later, but we're not relying on direct engagements, we're relying on different engagements. It's almost the exact same structure as Stefano's style, but everything is geared a little bit differently. And that's what makes it a truly sexy, sexy thing. If any of these places is too strong, we just retreat. If any of these places is too weak, we hang out. And look, more burrow harassment. We're going to force a scam. Yes. Something really just simple pops up out of that. And this daily is actually going a little bit faster than I thought, so what I'm going to try to do afterwards is watch another game where we get to see the sort of passivity pop up with the Ling Ultralisk. Hopefully we'll have time to do that, which would be neat. Make it a little bit more loosely structured, make it a little bit more Artosis Hour-like, which, by the way, if you haven't seen, you should definitely check out. And LiquidSheth is going to pop back now to this sort of broodlord moment, where we're going to see the same problems crop up with broodlords that have always cropped up. Polt is really, really good, so despite all that craziness that's gone on, he still has a really sizable army. This direct confrontation we can't really force, he just runs away because our broodlords are so slow. We might be able to nab this Thor. Thor should probably turn around and kill off an Infestor or two. Doesn't manage to. And these simple direct engagements, broodlords might end up failing us. We might be a little bit disappointed with our broodlords at the end of the day. We barely are able to crush the front. And you know what, let's go ahead and finish this game in part number 2 of this daily. Let's just speed it up. The simple addition of opening up more counterattack paths, incorporating these drops, has been peeling Polt every which way. Look at that, 32 SCVs, and here comes a glorious tab. Oh! Oh, I love that so much. Oh, yeah. Now, I just want to pretend for a moment that there was no entrance here. Pretend that there was not an entrance. We can still load up 2 overlords of zerglings and drop them here, and the counterattacks work the same way. I'm going to take a map that has some pretty easy defense. ESV Cloud Kingdom. On Cloud Kingdom, envision the top right position. So for those of you who don't know, okay, so we have our map. We have our map. Cool, you can kind of see. Over here's our main base, and then we have a kind of hook like this to our third base. We can actually run zerglings like over this way, load up overlords, and hit the third and drop into the main at the same time. And then the second base, we can just load one overlord in and drop zerglings there. You can almost always open up a ton of attack paths, even on seemingly really cramped together maps. So, on Antika's Shipyard, which traditionally looks cramped, suddenly is seeming pretty open as we have this Ultralisk just sort of rampaging its way into the main base. Zerglings literally just waltz their way in. A pair of Banelings. Oh, burrowing. Really, really, really slick play. Very difficult for the Terran to be in that many places at once. And this pathetic Broodlord Infestor army still is struggling to do these direct engagements. This is always fun, to do stuff like this and just freak your opponent out. I missed the Burrow Baneling bomb, but that's fine. I'll just accept it. I'm awful. Hilariously, this just as in the game versus Stefano, the Infestor Broodlord mixture ended up falling pretty easily. It didn't really do that much, but it was the exploiting of the mobility that ended up working out really, 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 really nicely. Oh, and that's cute, an Overlord with a Queen in it to unload for Transfuse, or it's a total accident and I'm giving Sheth way too much credit. But if there's any fellow that deserves credit, I give it to you, Sheth. And this moment excited me a lot, because in that final engagement we managed to win, but it was like the second big engagement of the entire game, aside from like 50 little tiny mini engagements. So even though I'm done with that game, we're going to come back for a part 3 where I want to take another look at this idea of being unable to apply pressure in this matchup. Hopefully I end up selecting a game that is a good illustration, so in the break, I will try to track it down. And there we go. All right, we'll be back in 2 minutes.